Of the approximately 20 first dates I have been on this year, more than 15 have told me they intend to purchase a rental property in the next few years. Many of them specifically mention a duplex. Is there certain media, creators, or forums promoting this? Why is it so common? Thank you, everyone, for the interesting conversation. My perspective has definitely shifted. To clarify, I understand what is appealing about being a landlord. It is just too bizarre to me how widespread it has become. If 75% of my dates said they wanted to be lawyers, I would think that was strange too. I apologize for going on so many dates. Next time I am asked out, I will say no to you all. Story 1. Houses became very inexpensive during the housing market crash from 2006 to 2012. Many people became wealthy by buying houses with low-cost mortgages, leveraging up, and purchasing more properties. This trend accelerated during the COVID-19 pandemic when 30-year mortgage rates fell below 3%. When an investment strategy works well, as buying real estate did during that period, many people tend to imitate it. Unfortunately, buying real estate, especially with leverage, is unlikely to generate the returns seen in the 2010s. The yields are poor. Story 2. Real estate ownership is a tried and true wealth-building strategy. The struggle is that most people do not actually have the capital on hand to do it. A friend of mine, who is an engineer and extremely frugal, did it, and now he does not have to be an engineer anymore. Many people see individuals like this and think this could be them, but for most, it cannot. If everyone could do it, there would be nobody to rent these places, right? We would all just be wealthy landowners. Side question. 20 or so first dates. Really? My God. I have not had a date all year. Story 3. Everyone dreams of having passive financial independence income in the same way everyone dreams of being that person who attracts many partners each year. It is always, in the next few years, it will come together for me when I do certain things. Most people daydream. Few people actually take action. Story 4. For many, it will be a flex prompted via YouTube influencers they have seen, monkey see, monkey do. For others, it will be for a genuine investment. However, there are two kinds of rental investors, and they are very different. Those who buy to supplement their lifestyle. These people tend to follow the property course methods. Buy, renovate, remortgage, rent. They remove all surplus equity, keeping the property mortgage to the hilt at the highest repayment levels while earning £200 to £300 per month profit. Bearing in mind these types of houses are hamstrung by environmental factors, their capital appreciation is minimal as a consequence, meaning very slow passive appreciation. Following this method requires many houses to make it worthwhile, and because the mortgages are maxed out, it exposes the investor to huge risk, creating a potential house of cards. The investor will never own more than the minimum percentage stake or deposit on each property. Those who buy for wealth accumulation. These people do not buy rentals to use the passive yield for lifestyle. They generally buy with larger equity stakes of 30 to 40% to keep repayments lower and the yield higher. They will rent them out and reinvest the yield in further purchases or overpay the mortgage to continually increase the equity within the property. This will eventually realize a fully paid-for asset earning 100% passive income while providing a source of leverage for more if needed. This is a long-term strategy. Again, capital appreciation is minimal but is a secondary consideration here due to the smarter financial approach. The investor will own the property in full within 15 to 25 years. Story 5. In general, it is because it is passive income. He might be showing off about his finances, or he might have had too many people tell him that he has no ambition, so this is his ambition. But let's assume that he is honest. I have a few rental properties, and I can tell you that the reason he might be interested in a duplex is that it is one of the easiest ways to get into rental property. You buy a duplex because you can get it at a single mortgage rate and live in one of the units. You rent out the other unit, and now your tenant helps pay your mortgage. This will lower your cost. Then, after a few years, you can repeat the process. Buy a second duplex, move into that one, and rent the unit you had been living in. Now you have 3 units and a place to live. You can repeat that a few more times before you need to get a little more creative. Story 6. There are many influencers promoting rental properties as a way to become a real estate mogul or build a wealth portfolio. Rental property can be a good investment, but these investors often jump on trends too late. Story 7. The book Rich Dad, Poor Dad became very popular after the 2008 recession. It inspired many people to buy rental properties, practice house hacking, flip homes, and more. There are not many ways for an average person to get ahead. You can try to enter one of the few careers that pay $200,000 per year, or you can start your own business. However, 75% of small businesses fail entirely, and the rest are not guaranteed to be better than a regular job. Therefore, people save money and buy rental properties. This process is slow, and there is no guarantee of making money in the short term. In fact, often the opposite occurs. But over 20 to 30 years, the properties increase in value, and you can end up quite well off. Story 8. They are a little late to the show. Rates are up, vacancies are up, and in some areas rent is down. This makes the return on investment calculations look pretty bad recently. As usual, when the average person thinks it, then it is too late. If corporate investors start selling, we could have another 2008. Of course, nobody knows the future, and it is just in my humble opinion. Story 9. There has to be a bubble in the rental housing market. When everyone thinks it is a surefire way to make money, that is a sure sign that the market is in need of correction. Story 10. If there is a Graham Stephan subscriber filter you can turn off on your dating application, that should take care of about half of it. Story 11. Rental properties are typically in addition to a primary property. By indicating that they want to or can buy rental property, they imply that they have financial assets. The goal is likely for you to conclude that they have money, assets, and are successful. This impression is intended to make them attractive and desirable as a date. Story 12. Passive income often overlooks how challenging being a landlord can be. People usually have to learn this lesson on their own. Story 13. Man here, rental condominium owner. Many men are breadwinners. Many men are ambitious but do not want to work forever. Many men think of various ways to generate passive income to secure the future. I wanted to have enough money to invest using capital gains and dividends but did not make enough to invest that way. I also felt like I was running out of time to make enough to invest sufficiently. My mother always wanted a rental property, so I grew up with the idea that is just what people do. When a seemingly once-in-a-lifetime opportunity came up, I jumped on it. It is definitely a harder investment than just parking lots of money. Story 14. I really do not think that buying a property and renting it out is as profitable as you think it is. Story 15. Passive income is strongly promoted by financial experts. It is also one of the main financial goals for success. Story 16. Real estate is one of the most widely recognized wealth builders. Many people are not committed enough to become real estate investors because it requires a lot of dedication. I tried and failed at it. Story 17. Yes, there are social media accounts that promote owning property as a passive income opportunity, which is somewhat part of hustle culture. Story 18. Yes, my social media feed is full of financial influencers pushing this idea as a means for passive income. Story 19. Many finance influencers discuss how this is a path to create wealth. Dave Ramsey and Caleb Hammer are strong supporters of this idea. Young people see this as a source of hope because it is very difficult to find a good job these days. It is possible to make a living as a landlord, but it is also possible to lose everything and go bankrupt. To my knowledge, that is how Dave Ramsey experienced bankruptcy. I am currently dating someone who bought a home to rent out and they realized they are losing $200 a month on average. Story 20. They see it as a way to boost their income, and it requires no intelligence at all to do it, so it is the most readily available option. Story 21. A lot of people think it is easy and passive income. It is not. It is a full-time job, and you can potentially face a lot of legal and financial trouble if you do the job incorrectly. My rental property owner, in particular, likes to send us passive-aggressive emails about things we should do to reduce unnecessary costs. He got upset because possibly one of our dogs chewed on a hose for the drip system in the backyard. The replacement hose costs less than $1. Meanwhile, he had to spend thousands fixing our air conditioning unit because he let the refrigerant run empty and just found out the other two units are technically uninhabitable due to code violations. Story 22. I guess it's just the easiest thing to think of to try and make passive income and be considered a high-value man or whatever if you at least own something, and even better, that something can make money. I've fantasized about one day owning property, and if I do, then I could rent it out but undercut the market just enough to supplement my income and free up some of my time to actually do something with my life. If I could ever make that work, I think I might be somewhat happy. So, on a date, it's something to let people know that you're at least financially literate enough to know that would be nice. It's a bit of a boring cop-out though. I don't know. I haven't dated in so long. Story 23. It's not about passive income, but about increasing your cash flow. It's easier to get your first home as a duplex or triplex and have the tenants cover most of your rent costs so you can save faster. Real estate is also a long-term wealth builder. Like any investing, the sooner you start, the better off you will be 10 to 20 years later. I bought my first home a little over 6 years ago. It has been rented out for 3.5 years, so the tenant has paid down the mortgage roughly $10,000. Not much to get excited about. However, I bought it for $250,000 with only $12,000 all-in cost. My biggest repair was replacing the roof after a hailstorm and cosmetic work to modernize the house. So, another $30,000 all in for maintenance and upgrades. I don't really count regular house payments as extra cost because you would have otherwise spent that amount on rent. The house is now professionally appraised and listed on Zillow for $405,000, and my mortgage balance is just below $210,000. So, for about $40,000 invested, I have $160,000 in value before tax, which continues to grow every year as the property appreciates and the mortgage balance decreases. One last benefit is that I am locked into an attractive payment. When everyone else was upset about small condos renting for $2,100 to $2,700 per month, my entire 2,000 square foot house is locked into a monthly payment under $1,800. Story 24. Many men are taught that they need to earn enough to provide for a family, so they try to get a bit more income where they can. Rental properties can be really beneficial, especially if you work hard. Story 25. The dream is to have enough passive income so that you do not have to work anymore, and owning rental properties seems like a great way to achieve that. I think it is more work than most people realize, but it is still the dream. Story 26. There is the idea of passive income that many people believe in. The male focus is likely because it is promoted by many male influencers followed by a large male audience. For what it is worth, I do not accept the idea that any large amount of income outside of what is available to the upper class of society is truly passive. Real estate management can be very demanding. Being a landlord does not just mean you can place tenants in a property and relax. You are still responsible for the property and its maintenance. If problems arise with difficult renters, you are essentially managing a full-time project for several months. You need enough resources to cover repairs, or you might be working a full-time job in addition to being a landlord. Story 27. Every wealth expert will tell you to make your money work for you. Invest in real estate. It fluctuates in the short term but generally yields long-term gains, except in cases of foreclosure. The idea is that rent covers your mortgage and expenses, providing good returns with minimal effort. This is what wealthy individuals do. They own land and collect rent. They often hire management companies to handle tenant issues. Story 28. Because some financial expert, those who are more successful selling advice on how to be rich than actually achieving it themselves, told them it is the path to financial independence. Story 29. I think it is the idea of passive income, or in general, generating income outside of a normal 9-to-5 job. I think a lot of us want to be financially independent, and owning property is a good investment on average. Story 30. As an older man who once wanted to do this, it checks all the boxes for someone who considers himself smart, ambitious, and independent. It universally seems smart and mature to anyone. It says, I am the opposite of a cryptocurrency enthusiast. It has that rugged, hands-on vibe. I am capable enough to do house maintenance and repairs. You are leveraging your traditional masculine traits to build passive income. This is an important ego boost if you have an office job. For the same reasons, a man who actually works with his hands will be quick to tell you about his intellectual pursuits. You get to be a real estate investor without the starting capital. It is easy to get a fully leveraged mortgage on a duplex, just like any normal single-family homebuyer. You are using your same access to consumer lending as everyone else, but as a real estate investor, not an ordinary consumer. You get to live in a more modest home than your intended social status would normally require. Living in a small house in a lower middle-class neighborhood says, "This is all I can afford right now. I hope I can change that someday." Owning a duplex in the same neighborhood says, "Future self-made rich person who lives here by choice, not necessity." My answer is somewhat snarky but also genuine and not meant to disparage. I applaud any young man who wants to get ahead in life. I am simply explaining why this particular choice is so appealing at a certain stage in life. I am glad I did not pursue this path. Not because it is not a good wealth-building strategy, it can be, though I think that is often overestimated. I just do not want to be a landlord since I dislike having difficult discussions with people. I have lived in many places and had many neighbors. It is uncomfortable to have a house neighbor who is mildly annoying. Imagine having a real issue with an actual renter who shares a wall with you. Now, my inner peace has value, and it is a lot higher than the very modest profit from a duplex. Before deciding to have a renter as a wall neighbor, you need to honestly examine your own comfort level with difficult people. I think young men have not seen enough of real society to realize how much of a burden the wrong renter can be, and they downplay the real risks. Or they believe they can know upfront which renters to avoid. It is amusing when a 25-year-old believes that duplex prices are market-driven, just like most investments. If you find one you are convinced is a great investment opportunity at the price, you should realize many more experienced investors have passed it over at that price. It is common for young men to believe they can beat the market. There is nothing wrong with that. This hard lesson is a rite of passage for every young, ambitious man. It makes total sense that buying a duplex is something young men aspire to do. Older men are more than happy to sell this amazing opportunity to them. Story 31. People have the mistaken idea that rental properties are a license to print money. If you bought the property years ago at a low point in the market, have maintained it well, know how to budget, got lucky with your market, and screen tenants carefully, they can do very well. But what influencers do not show is that problems happen. If you buy a property that is already priced high, requires a lot of repairs, and you do not screen tenants properly, that investment can become a money pit where you hold on for years hoping housing prices increase so you can get out from underwater. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a huge trend with financial influencers telling everyone to do short-term rentals. Many people either bought condos to do short-term rentals or found property owners who allowed them to sublet a 12-month rental for short-term stays. Then the pandemic happened and everyone panicked because their sure-thing money-making machine stopped working, but they still had to pay their mortgage or monthly rent. Many people found out for the first time that markets do not always go up. That said, 2- and 3-family homes were a traditional way for people to afford housing and have something to live on in retirement. They can work well, but rental properties require much more work and expense than many people realize. Story 32. It is perceived as passive income. People cannot find consistent work, so passive income is a better guarantee of long-term income. Story 33. Basically, it is because they want to make money and not work, at least not work for somebody. There is a strong belief that if you have rental income, you can build a nice stream of income and just live on the rental income. I have friends who have done this and did quite well. It took them about 10 to 15 years to start to pay off. Many people are trying this, and it does not pay off as well. Story 34. Because it is an easy way to bring in a second stream of income, as long as you have the money to buy the property. Story 35. It's a popular financial goal. The historical value of rentals is excellent, and it is influenced by many media sources. Unfortunately, the reality is they are overvalued, difficult to maintain at a high standard while being profitable, and require a significant amount of work. There is still good value to be found, but it is not all sunshine and rainbows. Story 36. Trendy hustle culture encourages people to get into investments or start a business. This is not a bad thing, but most people want to do it because they see content on social media. Story 37. It is considered a great way to build wealth and financial independence. The thing about rentals is that you are not necessarily getting passive income from rent. If you only break even on all your expenses and do not sell the house for a large profit, someone else is still paying your rent while paying off your debt. That is very attractive. Any extra passive income is a bonus in my opinion. They are telling you this because they want you to know they are not a deadbeat. They want you to know they want and can provide financial stability. They want you to know they are thinking about the future. Of course, talk is cheap. Story 38. Rental income. America is regressing into a feudal state with nobility that owns the land and peasants that rent. Story 39. I made a lot of money from the duplex I used to own. I lived in one side and rented the other. For the first few years that I owned it, it paid for itself. I wrote off all expenses related to the property on my taxes. Real estate is a very good investment. Story 40. What they plan to do and do are two different things. I know a person with 3 rental properties and 3 mortgage payments. It is not that glamorous. Story 41. It's a way of bragging, but they do not even have to have the property. Just make you think they are good financial planners and therefore can support you. Some women are not interested in a man unless he has some ambition with respect to our capitalist society. Story 42. It is a thoughtless way to try to convince you that they are financially literate. They are not going to buy a rental property. Story 43. All of those content creators telling you how much money you can make having rental properties. All you need to do is sign up for their monthly course. Anyone making large amounts of money would not be sharing the secret on YouTube. Story 44. I am a Vietnamese refugee living in California, and I tell my highly educated friends it is because we are refugees. For most, it is a difficult grind, but it is the only way we know to achieve leverage. Of course, there is futures day trading, but that requires skill. My sister's friend became a multimillionaire by selling half of her 30-plus duplexes. But she would still never wish this experience on her friends. Story 45. History has shown that it is always a good investment and an inflation hedge. As for those who are uninformed, why do you think private equity firms are buying homes to turn into rental properties? Story 46. Passive income is not exactly something new. Many people do not understand how much of a challenge it can be, though. Story 47. It just sounds good. Like they are a mover and shaker. They just want to impress you. Most probably, they cannot afford a doghouse. Story 48. Many people buy rental properties to diversify their investments. It is a way to earn income that is not tied to the stock market. If done correctly, it can provide steady cash flow, long-term value growth, and tax benefits. It is not completely hands-off, but for many, it is a reliable method to build wealth over time. Story 49. It is a commonly known way of having enough income to cover one's living expenses, so one can do whatever they want without worrying about having to work to pay bills. Story 50. It seems like you have received many answers, but for some reason, I cannot read them. My initial thought is that many people believe having rental properties means you do not have to work for a living. You can acquire houses and have others pay for them. Story 51. It's simply because many men believe that women want a man who has money. Not millions, just a stable income. Being a landlord provides that stability to a certain degree. Therefore, being a landlord is supposed to attract female attention. At least that's how I see it. But I want to buy something of my own so that I don't have to put money into someone else's wallet and people will leave me alone. Story 52. Real property is one of the best strategies for building wealth. Coupled with good tax planning, the first rental property can be pivotal in acquiring additional properties. Story 53. The message from almost every financial advisor is to invest in real estate to start building passive income. Buy a rental property and then charge your renters the cost of the mortgage payments. That way, you build equity while transferring the responsibility to the people living there. Story 54. Passive income is always appealing. Personally, the risk is not worth it in my opinion, but everyone's situation is different. I am pretty handy and I used to fantasize about becoming a house flipper, but the industry seems too saturated already and the housing market is far from consistently reliable. Story 55. It sounds like you have a plan and are doing something meaningful with your life. People appreciate those who have a goal. It does not sound as impressive when I say I just invest my money in the market and play video games. Story 56. It can be a good means of steady income as long as the place is in good shape and you get good tenants. Story 57. Because they think it's easy money instead of paying someone else's mortgage, they do not consider all the hidden phantom costs of owning a home. There is profit, of course, but not as large as they declare it to be after accounting for these hidden costs and taxes. The largest advantage is that they can tell people like yourself that they are financially mature and successful, then leverage your ignorance to increase their chances of exploitation. They are not going through all that effort just on the principle of owning a rental. First you make the money, then you get the power, and then you get the women. Tony Montana. Story 58. Buying properties for rental purposes is causing housing prices to spike. I cannot buy a house because prices are so inflated. This is also causing rental rates to increase. Cannot win. Story 59. Property will always increase in value over time unless there are unusual circumstances, such as a small town building a highway bypass around you. Buying property and renting it to cover your expenses builds wealth. When you are ready, you sell it for a profit and reinvest that money tax-free into the next property. Repeat this process and eventually, if you do it right, you will become a millionaire. Story 60. Because it is a retirement nest egg, one that the government cannot change the rules on overnight. Unlike superannuation, I can cash in my rental property anytime. Story 61. It is just American economic history since the new millennium. After the Great Recession, investing in real estate has been an obvious choice, with real estate prices growing 10 to 20% a year. That said, it is not nearly as passive as some people make it out to be. I highly expect things to change in the housing market, as that level of appreciation is unsustainable. Story 62. No podcast that I know of, but I know my father had a rental house when I was young, and it is something that is often repeated. Unless you buy at the top of the market, it usually works out. Retirement is scary. Fortune favors the bold. You can keep your day job, especially if you work from home, where you can occasionally take a break. All it takes is being a good bookkeeper, taking a few calls now and then to fix something, and generally being available. There is risk involved, but all things considered, it is the easiest way to start your own business because homeownership already prepares you for it. It only requires a little time and financial sacrifice. It will never go to zero, and it feels like you have more control over your future compared to sending your money to your Fidelity 401k. Story 63. It is an easy way to increase your net worth and income. However, it is not possible for most men. To qualify for the loan on an income property, you need to prove that you can pay the mortgage. You must demonstrate that you can do this without collecting the rent. Additionally, you need to have a full 25% down payment before any bank will consider writing the note. Bankers know that when financial conditions tighten, borrowers are significantly more likely to lose their investment properties. They also understand that conditions will become tight. To reduce the number of defaults, the requirements are much higher than for normal mortgages. Very few people will meet those requirements. The men you are talking to are misleading you and possibly themselves. Story 64. Because they believe it is a way to get rich, impress others, or retire early. Rentals can be okay, but I would rather stick with low-cost exchange-traded funds and not have to be a landlord or deal with the issues. Story 65. A duplex allows you to live in one unit and rent out the other, or rent both units. It is typically a good investment because the rental income, if you have a mortgage on the property, will cover the mortgage payments and provide additional income. In addition, this is semi-passive income. Real estate usually appreciates over time, so you will likely profit when you sell the property. Story 66. Because they are influenced by Grant Cardone and various other scam artists who claim it is the easiest and simplest way to become rich. Story 67. Because it is the only way most people in this country will ever be able to retire comfortably or support a family. Standard wages will not suffice. Story 68. Historically, real estate is the most valuable and effective method of wealth building. Can be passed on to your children after you die, creating generational wealth. Story 69. Because they have never experienced multiple land tax and rates bills, repair bills, routine maintenance, and so on. Once they have done it a few times, they do not want to do it anymore. I got rid of 5 properties to avoid being a servant to fixing air conditioners. I still have a few left. Story 70. Property always appreciates in value. Depending on the type of property you are buying and how you plan to rent it out, you could cover all your costs and gain equity. My dad bought a condominium on the Jersey Shore and uses it as a short-term rental. He makes enough money during the summer months to pay the mortgage for the entire year. Combined with the fact that it has almost tripled in value since he bought it, it has been a good investment for him and my mom. Story 71. Anyone who uses the term passive income either has no idea what passive income is or no idea what is involved in maintaining a property. Story 72. It used to be that the average person could find a job to support their family and live a decent life, but that mostly ends in poverty these days. People look for alternatives, including becoming a landlord. A few years ago, women faced intense discrimination for entering the adult entertainment industry, but now many of them are on subscription-based content platforms trying to earn enough money to buy a house. Story 73. I am going to get downvoted for this, but real estate, especially single-family homes, should not be considered investments. Instead, buy stocks, bonds, and exchange-traded funds. Story 74. It is usually a smart financial move, and owning multiple properties can be seen as a status symbol. In a dating situation, it might be a signal to project wealth. Duplexes offer several advantages. Since it is your residence, you can take advantage of tax rebates for mortgage interest or energy efficiency upgrades. Additionally, it is easier to obtain a mortgage for a house you will live in. The idea is that people are less likely to default on their home than on an investment property because doing so would leave them homeless. I was talking to a mortgage broker last week. He said many people buy a house as their residence, live in it while fixing it up, then after a year or so turn it into a rental, buy a new place, and repeat the process. The projected income from renting the current house is factored into their debt-to-income ratio, which can help them get a new mortgage even if they have significant mortgage debt. Story 75. Talking about it means just trying to impress you. Actually doing it is a great way to make passive income. Of the 100 who talk about it, 1 or 2 will actually do it. Story 76. Many of the podcasts that young men listen to present rental properties as the best way to build wealth. However, almost every financial advisor or person educated in finance ranks rental properties low on the list of priorities for building wealth and financial stability. This is because rental properties involve significant risks and require a lot of work. For every person who made a substantial amount of money in rentals or real estate, there are hundreds who went broke. The same pattern appeared with cryptocurrency. More people lose money investing in cryptocurrency than become wealthy. Story 77. They do not even have a house yet. All talk. I love owning a single-family home and not having neighbors sharing walls or sharing the outdoor spaces. Story 78. Multifamily real estate has several money-making advantages. It is tax favorable. You can leverage, putting down 20% while the total value of the property appreciates. It is cash flow positive. All these things are beneficial, but only if 1. You pick the right metropolitan area for the rental. You have the cash flow to manage vacancy and capital expenditures until you can build up 2 funds from rents received. You pay the right price for the property. Being involved in multifamily real estate funded my retirement in less than 5 years. Market timing does matter to a degree depending on your goals. Story 79. There are many influencers who promote owning a duplex as a stepping stone to financial success. It can be, if you work hard, are willing to do maintenance, upgrades, and repairs yourself, and are careful to avoid problematic tenants who may take advantage of you. Most people who try fail because they expect instant income. Story 80. Same as any other homeowner. Security. Once you own a home, rent does not increase and you cannot be non-renewed. You finally get to settle somewhere and become part of the community for real. Why a duplex where they live in one half and rent out the other half? They cannot afford to buy a single-family home outright and know they never will. Duplexes are affordable. Story 81. There are many ways to generate more money from money. You can buy stocks and bonds, trade foreign exchange, buy gold, cryptocurrency, or start a business. Rental properties are one possible way to make money. As returns on different types of investments shift, people will move assets into those offering the best returns. If people believe real estate will have good returns, it will attract more investment. Real estate has an advantage that many other assets do not. If you have the relevant skills, you can add significant value to property through your labor. When you buy shares in a company, you cannot finish the basement or modernize the kitchen. With the right skills, you can add considerable value to a house yourself. Every country has different rules that change regularly. Different assets receive varying tax treatment. If rental income or house price appreciation is taxed at a lower rate than other assets, that can make real estate highly desirable. Story 82. It is a smaller real estate investment that they can live in while renting the other half and still be living independently. The other renter can often cover a significant portion of the cost. I am not sure if any particular media, creators, or forums are promoting the idea of real estate investing, but in this housing market, it seems like a good strategy. It is likely common because men regularly think about their future. These days, women are vocal about not wanting to date a man who has roommates or lives with his parents. Story 83. My uncle owns rental properties. He said it's because it makes him good money to flip a house and rent it out for more than he should. He also has a fleet of rental cars that you can rent in addition to your rental property. Story 84. I don't know, man. The number of people doing that is definitely increasing. You need to do it smart or know how to fix the place after your tenants damage it. Contractor repairs can be a real burden. Story 85. As mentioned previously, given the difficult job market and companies that lay off employees on a whim, owning something that generates income and ideally covers your rent is a great way to provide stability in uncertain times. That said, it is not for everyone and has its own challenges. Many people attempt it thinking there is no work involved, but there is, along with significant tax implications. I purchased a property 5 years ago, and it was the best financial decision I have made. I established long-term housing stability. I am in a high-demand market and know how to handle much of the upkeep and improvements myself. This is important considering the high cost of contractor labor today. Story 86. For decades, we have been told that the way to get rich is to do everything we possibly can, work very hard, and neglect most parts of your life if you want to be wealthy. The internet has shown everyone that in order to get rich, you do not have to do much. You only have to own something and leverage others. We are tired of working so hard, and now we want to try to do it the easy way. Story 87. They are just trying to signal to you that they are working hard and want to be good providers. It is almost certainly inspired by TikTok, but it is just a new version of something old. Story 88. It is an investment to secure longer-term attempted passive income. It is easier to understand for many people and is a tangible asset compared to something like a real estate investment trust or a 3-portfolio fund. Story 89. It's the current way to make money and be your own boss hot topic. It's them showing they have drive and goals or something like that. They are trying to impress you. But the devil is in the details. If you know how to do a lot of home repairs yourself, you can make money because renters tend not to take care of things on average. My friend and my aunt have rental properties, and they put an unbelievable amount of work into repairing things that get torn up. So if the person looks like they can't fix a sink or install a door, they are just talking. Story 90. Property is the key to true wealth growth. If you are meeting men in their 20s thinking about real wealth creation instead of sneakers and cars, you are on the right path. Story 91. I do not watch social media influencers, but my guess is that landlording is the only consistent way to make money currently aside from working, especially given rent prices. Story 92. You need to live somewhere, and if you don't mind being a landlord, living in one apartment and renting out the other in a 2-family house provides good income. Story 93. A duplex is a great asset for both generating passive income, and it is still small enough to manage and repair by yourself. It has fewer headaches compared to a 4-plex or larger property. Additionally, with housing appreciation, it serves as a retirement strategy as well. Story 94. Some people see it as a good way to make money. My accountant told me that everyone he knew who was wealthy achieved that through real estate. Most of them do not know how miserable being a landlord can be without the right mindset. As to why they tell you this, maybe they are just making conversation. Maybe they are trying to impress you with their ambition, drive, and work ethic. Story 95. I purchased a triplex in 2017. I have had ups and downs, as has everyone through the COVID-19 crisis until now. I most certainly would have become homeless or had to move in with a roommate during this time if I had not lived in my property while renting the other 2 units. Before anyone criticizes landlords, I do keep the property cared for as best I can since I also live there. The rents I charge are easily half the amount for comparable rents in my area. It is my way of providing myself with a home and doing what I can to provide a reasonably affordable place. I only make enough from my rents to cover the monthly property costs. I also have a full-time job, so it is not like this is making me rich. Story 96. Duplexes are a great way to house hack without having to share living space. They provide housing for the owner while generating rental income to help pay off the mortgage. Once paid off, they create a positive net income stream. An owner-occupied duplex allows you to get a personal loan rather than a commercial loan, which is more favorable and easier to qualify for. Owning real estate is a good store of value that is likely to appreciate above the rate of inflation. There are also beneficial tax advantages when owning real estate. Story 97. Passive income sounds appealing. Men often like to work with their hands to keep their minds busy, such as do-it-yourself repairs. Social media hustler culture has influenced this mindset. The American reward system encourages exploitative, predatory capitalist behavior. It builds real, tangible equity that feels like a genuine asset. Story 98. I think it's just an economic stability issue, particularly in the United States. Property is a stable asset that continues to increase in price at a time when stocks are volatile and salaries for most jobs haven't kept up with inflation. Additionally, there are high unemployment or underemployment rates for young people. Having the money to buy property is viewed as a status symbol. Owning property that others pay to use is basically seen by a millennial or Generation Z male as being a landed noble in Europe. Honestly, I went through a phase with my ex in my mid-20s when I wanted to buy a condo and rent it out to college students in my city. In my 30s, that would be nice, but I don't think it's the wisest use of my funds, nor a noble or meaningful pursuit that would impress people. Granted, I have a loving girlfriend, so I'm not showing off these days, but perspectives change when you find other meaning in life. Overall, it sounds like you're dealing with immature men who view this as a status symbol. I can't say how many guys are like this, but it is a thing. Men often think money and property are attractive and expect others to be impressed. Being a landlord is a modern hallmark of that, especially given the cost of living and housing crisis. Part of it is a sign of the times. Part of it might be the type of men you are attracting or looking for. Story 99. Now that I think about it, I think it would be nice to have somewhere to go to do some real work, with people appreciating the work you have done to help them live better. It has been a while since I have done that. Story 100. Because passive income is important if you own a rental property, the goal is that the rent you collect pays the mortgage. Once the mortgage is paid off, it provides income you do not have to spend a lot of time generating. It is also an asset you can borrow money against or sell once the value has increased enough to yield a good profit on your investment. Story 101. I think the mistake you're making is thinking that it's some sort of useless fad. Buying a rental property is advice given all over the world, especially in Asia where their entire dating culture starts with, "How many properties do you have and where?" It's proven that the vast majority of wealthy people own real estate. So people see that and think, okay, if I want to be rich, I better own some real estate. Of course, there are other ways to get rich, but real estate is definitely one of the popular methods. I think what's happening here is you have no desire to own real estate, which is fine. But you're hoping Reddit will validate you and say, oh, all those people going after rental properties are fools. Don't fall for it. Story 102. I wanted to do this when I was 25, and my wife and I were hunting for our first house. We were broke back then, and my idea was to start with a duplex so that we could live in one half rent out the other, and have our mortgage either completely or at least partially paid by the tenant. My wife did not want us to be landlords, and she also did not want to share a wall with a stranger anymore after years of apartment life. We ended up buying a single-family home and never became landlords, which I am now glad about because I have come to realize that landlords are basically the ticket scalpers of housing, and I am happy not to be a part of that. Story 103, Financial Answer. It is a solid investment. Using debt to build passive income is the key. Dating answer. It sends the message that I am financially stable. You can build a future with me. Story 104, To make passive income, most people cannot live on a single job salary anymore, but we still feel like any potential partner expects us to provide financially, whether it is realistic or not. They are either trying to make more money or saying they are trying to make more money to impress you. Story 105. I am a man with a rental property. It has earned an extra $40,000 per year for me over the last 5 years, mostly through equity increase. I am lazy, so any way I can make money without showing up somewhere is a win for me. Story 106. No, it is just very expensive out there. Having renters could mean having friends nearby, income, or both. Additionally, it seems like a stable enough investment. Everyone wants a place to live. Story 107. No one can really afford to buy a house anymore, so there is a lot of money to be made in the rental industry. Story 108. It's something I had considered as a stepping stone to owning the house I actually wanted. It didn't end up happening, but nobody told me to do it, and I didn't view it as a gendered thing. Story 109. Well, they could buy a home with an extra bedroom and rent out the bedroom. Or they could get a duplex and rent out the entire unit. I think it is just the convenience of owning while trying out being a landlord without having to drive anywhere. Story 110. I am a 47-year-old woman. I owned rental properties in my 20s. They definitely made me money and bought me a nice house, but dealing with tenants was a lot of work. Some tenants are more high maintenance than others. My favorite investments are pieces of land I have purchased in key areas over the years where I predicted significant market growth. Then I do not have to deal with tenants or any problems, and that land appreciates continuously every year. Story 111. Unless water levels rise, sinking 40 miles of inland homes on all coasts, property appreciates much more than it depreciates. Property is a physical asset that exists in the world, not an imaginary concept that must be believed in to have value. The dollar only works if we all believe in it. There is no intrinsic value in a piece of paper or cloth. I think this is correct. If you invested in the market years ago and did not touch it versus gold, gold would be worth more today. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.